Bitcoiners, hope you're doing well. We've still got a few of these ridiculous things that we're trying to work out with the studio. And I have other strange news. My hot water kettle has broken this morning, and I don't know why. So I can't have coffee with you. I'm just going to have water. But we're going to live, right? We're going to live. It's good water. A little disappointing to not have coffee, but that's fine. All right. It says there's no live chat yet, and I got to wait. So we'll see what happens with that. YouTube not coming in yet with anything. I'll find out what's... Oh. Yikes. What is that? If I click on YouTube, it turns out that I go to the actual feed. This is crazy. Well, still some kinks. There we go. Okay, people coming in. People coming in. People coming in. Excellent. There we go. Fixed it. I like the new studio, everyone. Bomatang, good morning, Bitcoiners. But it takes a bit of time to get used to. And B for Victory's thing just came in doubles. That's fine. That's fine. Paradox 606, good morning. David, good morning, plebantry. I love that word, plebantry. King Mansa Musa. Hope you're doing great, my man. Good morning from Florida. Don't we love it there? Christine, glad you made it. Glad you made it, Christine. Oh no, good morning. Yeah, no coffee. It really is terrible. It's terrible. I like water in the afternoon, not in the morning. Huddle T, good morning. Breakup. YouTube is running. Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Remind the people in the Bitcoin magazine feed to come in here. Indeed. Everyone in. Come on over. Remember, people in the Bitcoin magazine live feed. You know, it's great. I like growing the audience. I get a nice dopamine hit out of the thousands of viewers that come through the Bitcoin magazine channel. However, I won't be reading your comments anymore. So the bonus of coming into the Count BTC channel is you get your comments up here on the board because I can't see them over on the other one. For some reason, it doesn't let me see them. That's okay. That's okay. That is okay. Joe letting us know that the sun is up in Pennsylvania. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I was wondering. I didn't know. It's here in the Caribbean, but we don't know if it's everywhere. Turns out I can confirm the sun is up, everyone. Here, Pennsylvania, elsewhere too, I think. And Bitcoin's running, but I can verify all around the world. All right. I don't have to ask everyone. It's running. We're doing great. Let's have a water and talk about what's new. Not doing it. It's just not doing it. But that's okay. This is going to do it. Okay. We can substitute our want of coffee for our want of fake news. And we've got some good ones today. What did I tell you about old Fannie Willis? Fannie for Congress. She's a hero. That black woman ain't taking shit. All right. Turns out she's accepting an award. Fannie Willis accepts the Black History Achievement Award and delivers remarks in church. Congratulations, Fannie Willis. We knew you could do it. Excellent stuff. This one's great. All right. So the New York Post says, eating this amount, and it's not a lot. I'm only going to read the headline, though. Eating this amount, very little, of protein is too much and can damage your arteries. New study warns. All right. So don't eat too much of that stuff. But we got a few health tips here. There's more than one. Okay. So be careful of the protein because of the arteries, right? Your arteries can't handle the protein. Now, if you decide to exercise because you want to eat protein, right, and you're worried about your arteries, I got a warning for you. But it's especially for white men, okay? It's especially for white men. Too much exercise can kill you, especially if you're a white man. Study finds that 7.5 hours a week of fitness doubles your risk of heart disease. Super sciencey, super sciencey. So if you eat too much protein, you're going to get trouble with the arteries. But if you exercise too much, you're also going to have trouble with the arteries, right? Now, if that happens to you, you might want to go see a doctor, right? You might say, I got a heart problem. I got all this stuff, but be careful. Be careful. All right. NBC News has extra news for you. So remember, the protein, no good. The exercising too much, especially white people can't exercise too much because they're going to die. NBC News letting us know around 60% of Black American adults have heart disease, and heart disease death rates are highest among Black Americans compared to other groups. But here's the kicker, everyone. But studies estimate that Black doctors make up as little as 3% of cardiologists in the United States, which means that if you don't go to a doctor with a matching skin color, you're in big, big trouble. All right. Because if your doctor doesn't have your skin color, they can't help you. It's clear from the data. The scientists said it, right? So white people, if you're exercising too much, make sure you have a white heart doctor friend. It's your only hope. It's your only hope, okay? It's not going to work out. Now, this is another problem. I'm going to Canada now for job descriptions, right? So you want to be a heart doctor, right? And you're white? Careful. According to the Ottawa Citizen, can job postings in Canada exclude white people? Short answer, you bet they can. Yes, they can, right? In a recent job posting search for Canada Research Chair, applications are restricted to those who identify as members of a racialized minority. So there you go. Canada, doing great. This one's fun. The Washington Chronicle has come out with an endorsement for president for the 2024 election. It's amazing. Let me read it to you. Remember, it's my subcategory of favorite things, people who think Biden is amazing. It's awesome. Here, Houston Chronicle, right? Word for word. I'm not even, this is from their whole editorial board. The editorial board. This is what they said. We are reassured in large part because Biden has restored the tradition of a capable team running the White House, a tradition trampled by Trump's deeply flawed scheme to run a one-man show. So it's okay that Biden is not in control because it's not a one-man show. It's okay. It's not a problem. Not a problem. You don't need to know who's in charge. It's not a problem. You voted for him, but you don't need to know. He does. It's okay. It's a tradition to have a wicked strong team. It's so good. Part of that team is Jake Sullivan. We were talking about him yesterday. He's the guy who said, well, you know, the Fourth Amendment doesn't really provide much security, so it's no good. We're not into the privacy of Americans because, you know, the kids. Think about the kids. They might die. Right? He's got to save you. So Politico did a feature on him today. They didn't really talk about how not into the Constitution, right? They left that part out. But they're letting us know here that globalism is out. Bidenism is what they call it now. Bidenism is in, right? Bidenism, okay? No word yet on how Bidenism relates to Bidenomics, but we're going to wait and find out. I'm sure they're going to tell us, right? Bidenism is a new thing, right? Bidenism. You got some Bidenism in your worldview, right? You got any Bidenism? So good. So Biden, of course, comes from Delaware, right? The state of Delaware. And Delaware's been in the news lately for a number of reasons, right? Some corruption reasons. And the biggest reason being that Elon Musk and Tesla moved their head office. So if a lot of people don't know this, Delaware used to be the main seat of many U.S. corporations because the state was such an empty vessel and sold out to corporate interests many, many years ago so that the corporate governance could be run with a lot of support, let's say, from a corrupt legal system that grew around it. But now the Washington Post is letting us know that just because one of the largest companies in the world and Elon Musk and many others are saying, get out of Delaware, it's now a corrupt shithole that is instituting political retribution, right? So there's some people out there saying that. But what does the Washington Post say, right? What's their advice? All right, on the judge that gave a judgment against Tesla, SpaceX, and Elon Musk. Washington Post says, meet the Delaware judge who keeps foiling Elon Musk, right? She keeps foiling him. Kathleen McCormick's no-nonsense rulings have earned the Tesla chief's ire and the corporate law world's respect. Everyone, the corporate law world is like, whoa, I didn't know Delaware was so awesome. They're kicking out one of the best companies and behaving so corruptly. That's what I want. I'm going to move to Delaware. Everyone respects them. Everybody knows it, right? It's perfect. So this judge, right, is just perfect. So we got to invite Kathleen McCormick to Bitcoin 2024. She looks like an awesome judge. She's just amazing. She's just amazing. Oh, this one's really great, right? So this comes from the Daily Mail in England. MAGA mania. Russian oligarch buys pair of autographed Trump sneakers for 9,000 US trash tokens at auction, while others list limited edition kicks for 45,000 US trash tokens on eBay. So this Russian oligarch, turns out he's like moved to America as a kid, and he's actually from Ukraine. It's not even from there. So, but you know, the idea of a Russian oligarch, ooh, but I thought, wasn't I told that they were going to suffer a catastrophic financial collapse after U.S. sanctions? Why are they still selling oligarch stories? Oh, what's this? CNN. The Kremlin has never been richer, thanks to a U.S. strategic partner. So Russia has never been richer, everyone. Okay, which is true, I think. And it turns out it's because it's actually America buying their oil. It's India selling it, but both Europe and America are buying it. So Russian oil is just having a good time, selling, doing great. Speaking of oil, let me see if I got some comments here. Oh, let me just see one thing here. I want to try again to see if I can get the back. I haven't been able to figure this out yet. I just want to see if I can get the back stuff. Let me pull up my picture album. Maybe this will work. We'll see. Shared albums, February 20th. Okay. It really doesn't let me do the presentations, huh? I mean, it just really doesn't let me. Screen share. Do it. Nah, I don't know what the hell's wrong with this thing. It's never going to work. There's buttons. They don't do anything. I don't know what's up. Okay. Give me another chance tomorrow and I'll try and figure this out again. I'm going to try and do some of the, screen thing. Okay. So remember we were talking about the Russian energy issue and the trade that they make through India, and the idea that they've never suffered any consequences from America weaponizing their banking system and financial system and the US dollar for military purposes, right? So here's an article from Doomberg today. So I don't subscribe to Doomberg, but I can usually get what he means out of his he gives a piece of his Substack articles away for free, gives sort of the intro away for free. So I'm a regular reader of that. I have it delivered to my mailbox. I do think he's worth paying for. So I don't want to say that, I don't want to endorse what I do. I think if you're really interested in energy in particular, Doomberg is one of the better accounts out there. And I think his Substack is really strong. So he wrote a piece yesterday called Atlas Won't Shrug. The human endeavor demands more energy, so it shall be. And what he says here is that despite all of the economic troubles we've seen since the 1970s in America, with Nixon and the end of the gold standard, with the oil shock that came right after, with the multiple recessions America experienced in the late 70s, early 80s, and again in 2008, all of these events never really stopped energy from being produced, right? It just kept moving along. No matter what war we got involved in, no matter what, we kept getting more and more energy. And what he explains here is that one of the issues here is that the economists who think of energy sort of have had it wrong for a long time, right? And his argument is the following: energy is not an input into the economy, it is the economy. So you've heard that many times here on the Breakup, right? I've told you 100 times that the reason why Quebec and Texas, I love Quebec, right? But one of the reasons why they're a little dumb is because, and I love them, I'm one of them, I'm a Quebecer, right? But Texans can be the same. They don't really have to care what's going on in the world. Whatever happens to them, they're fine. Energy is solved for Quebec. It's solved for Texas. And they don't have to think too much about it, right? They can make a million other mistakes in Quebec, and they do. I mean, Quebec it's got a certain amount of competency running the place, but really, truthfully, what it has is 100 million do-overs, because it doesn't really matter if you have energy that right, unless you're Alberta in Canada, which got completely fleeced on its energy deal, and there's very little incentive to do it well, unlike Quebec, where they got the good deal for Canadian federalism and energy. Quebec can make a million mistakes and still get it right? Still have a good quality of life. It's why I've explained many, many times that Texas and Quebec are almost like cousins or something, right? So the similarities, they're a little bit opposite, but very much similar. You can see it clearly, right? Both of them as sub-federal states are the only two sub-federal states in Canada on the continent, in Canada and the United States, whose state flag is more popular and flies more often than the federal flag. So if you go around Quebec, you will see the fleur-de-lis, the flag of Quebec, way more often than you will the Canadian flag. The Canadian flag is quite rare, actually, to see in Quebec. A few federal buildings will fly it, but that's about it, right? Schools, for example, public schools in Quebec are all funded by the province. It's a provincial competency, so they actually banned years ago the federal flag from flying, right? They don't do it. You'll see something very similar when you go around Texas. You'll see the Texan Lone Star flag as much more popular. Both of these places think of themselves as countries within a country. They haven't forgotten what they really are, right? And indeed, most of North America before World War II thought of themselves as, most of the states thought of themselves as more like European states. It was only after that the federal bureaucracy and the federal identity really took over. But before, they had a regional idea of who they were and a legal framework that allowed them to be like countries. That's why Texas is able to exercise its sovereignty on the border to this day. That's why there is this issue between federal and Texan power when it comes to the border issue. So the identity of both places are as nations, not because they have some spirit inside of them, not because they are so different than anyone else. No, it's because they have their own energy situation, and it's so strong and robust, they don't really need anyone. And because they don't need anyone, they can be a little bit insular in their own ways, and they can focus on all the mistakes they make, which don't really matter because they have energy correct. So Doomberg here explaining more or less that humanity organizes its economic activities to ensure a steady growth in the extraction and exploitation of primary energy, because energy is life. Standards of living are defined by how much energy is available to be exploited, and all humans everywhere. What's going on? Oh, I got a coffee. My amazing wife has made me a coffee using, I think, just stovetop boil. So my life is actually perfect now. Thank you, wife. I appreciate it. No reason to get angry at that door opening. It was coffee. We're saved. We are saved. We are saved. It's my third cup of coffee in the day. I get up at around 4:30 though, so I was already limiting. So when we think of the energy piece and that it is, part of life and standard of living is defined by how much energy is available to be exploited, and all humans everywhere are perpetually seeking a higher standard of living. So, and indeed, he goes into just how silly economists have been around this question, right? That they have completely got it wrong over the years. They simply think of they simply think of energy as just sort of another thing that happens on the fringes of the economy. But that's starting to change, right? It's not possible to sort of see the world that way anymore, because the sanctions in particular with Ukraine and America have proven that the financial system, which we thought was the lifeblood, isn't really, to the extent that the energy becomes more important and a larger factor in their overall prosperity and wealth. What is happening? Just a second. Sorry, my family is coming today, and I rented the neighbor house, and my neighbor is cleaning with a water hose the porch, so it's going to be loud for about a second, but it should be fine. So, a lot of distractions this morning. So, um, the Kremlin never being richer, that title we read earlier, what it really is underlining to me is that we're starting to understand more than ever that following the energy and using energy as a gauge of economic health is much better than using just finance and financial engineering and what's going on with this and what's going on with that. You could actually follow the energy to find out where the war in Ukraine is headed, for example, right? You can make a lot more predictions just having an economic idea based on energy, right? As energy being your foundational element to understanding economics, you're able to understand the war a lot better. You're able to make predictions a lot better. You're able to see, what the real fight is, right? It's the idea, again, and we talked about it a bit yesterday. We have sort of two competing gas stations going after energy. Now, Doomberg in this article says, no, it's false to look at Russia as a gas station. It's more than that because energy is correct, and that's actually a better vision. That's a false image that Western economists have given to Russia. So I'm disagreeing with them slightly. I'm saying that the economists got it right, but what they don't realize is that it applies to them too. They were sort of saying that Russia is just a gas station, right? And America is so much better. And now there's no denying the American economy is the most robust, mature, complex, layered in the world, right? I don't think anyone would argue that. However, the energy is a big part of that. I don't, give Biden credit. I think America is still drilling more oil than anyone, right? I think that's what's happening. I think we're still increasing the overall amount of energy despite all of the political craziness, right? I think Texas is still doing great producing energy. So where these guys got it wrong, and where I'm disagreeing with Doomberg, is that when he said it's not that Russia is not a gas station, what I'm saying is we're both gas stations, despite America's complex energy system. Now, everything else that is not part of that gas station is almost like extra growth that happens from, a type of mutation from just having too much stuff, right? Just too much of a complex economy, too much of a rich economy, too much luxury, too much decadence has created this situation where we have all these things that we don't even understand anymore. And the machine has become so confusing and complex that, it's normal that economists have failed to the extent that they have. So this is really, really distracting. One second. All right. Got it. She was using a pressure hose, just too loud. Sorry about that, guys. I'm getting trolled. Yeah. So, my meatloaf. Meatloaf. Yeah, I know you don't. I do, though. Very, very loud. I couldn't keep my thoughts clear. It was just too loud. Normally, I wouldn't mind, but it's a big porch. So she could have been there for a while. So, And here's Doomberg, just to get back in the flow, talking about where these economists get it wrong, right? One category of people that fails to understand this concept and should know better includes those who cling to the thesis that humanity will soon be confronted with peak cheap oil, and that once this event unfolds, oil prices will remain stubbornly, catastrophically high, and life as we enjoy it today will suffer. This cohort gets the first half of the scenario mostly right. A sudden and meaningful loss of access to economically accessible oil would indeed be a crisis. But what they get wrong is just how temporary that crisis would be, the extent to which entire economic and political systems would swiftly reorient, and the ruthless efficiency with which humanity would regress up to that gently oscillating sine wave of primary energy consumption, right? So, hope it's clean after. So the argument here being that because energy is such a principal organizing factor for humans, that it will trump any other, political decision out there, which is kind of what Bitcoiners are betting on in a sense, right? We're betting on the reality that political persuasion is almost at an end, right? The idea that fiat, using words, brainwashing, and using persuasion and persuasion to get their way in a centralized media system, it was possible to do that. It was possible to get people and to conjure hallucinations around political points, and then maybe things work out in the end and we would get some energy and it would be fine, right? So what happened for years with this system was that there was no other way to really have an argument that broke the mold. But what we're seeing now with Ukraine and Russia and the energy question will put things more squarely into a world that Bitcoiners can understand, in that our opinions and our logic and our political persuasion is becoming less important. What's becoming more important is literally what humans want and what they're afraid of. Wants and fears are much more persuasive than some words cobbled together and some poetry and some feelings and all that stuff. So now that and what he's saying here, I think anyway, is that if humans are pressed, if they have to reprioritize what's going on because of energy, they will, and ruthlessly will put energy at the top of the list. Now, when you think of, for example, what would keep humans from making these decisions, to keep humans from deciding that Russia producing a lot of energy and America producing a lot of energy and everyone producing a lot of energy is probably a good thing, and that the political things about eating bugs and recycling and using less energy and all that stuff has to continue to be, they have to continue to use persuasion and political logic in order to get people to do it that way, because they won't do it naturally. It's not in their inclination unless they're brainwashed and hypnotized. So that's why when you hear things like the following, right? And it's why I think we're at the precipice now. We're at a real inflection point for this stuff. Here's, I think, the best they can do. I mean, I literally think this is the best they can do. We've got, where the hell did I put it? We've got Brian Stelter. Brian came out and gave the following quote. This was from the Munich thing this weekend, right? The Munich security conference where Hillary was out speaking. So here's Brian Stelter, okay? Guys, this is the best they have. This is what's left. This is what the people who want to perpetuate the petrodollar are left with. This is as good as it's going to get for them. Brian Stelter with the following: 4 American senators recounted a story Ukrainian officials told them at the Munich security conference. A soldier in a muddy trench with Russian artillery exploding nearby, scrolling on his phone for signs the U.S. House would approve military aid. So he's saying here that the frontline soldiers, right, their main priority is like, did the House pass a bill on money? Right, so obviously this comes in the wake of Russia has space lasers and space nukes. Give us 60 billion. This comes in the wake of Navalny was killed. We have to go defend him. Give us $60 billion. right? And now they've got Brian Stelter coming out and saying, they really need the money, give the money. Right now, contrast that with what's actually happening in the real world. What's actually happening in the real world, and this is David Sachs, is that there is no $60 billion coming. None. Right? He says you can almost feel the panic online that the 61 billion won't pass. For many, this is the last big payoff they will ever see. They will say anything to get it. They will do anything to get it. So this is David Sachs, because they went on a bunch of attack ads on him yesterday, right? They found some interview from David Sachs from the 90s where he was talking about American power and American, especially energy, right? That you would, if you can't guarantee energy, that America should just go bomb. If someone wants to make weapons of mass destruction, we'll kick their ass. Now, he made this video in 1997. People were trying to recycle it to make it sound like it was from the Iraq War in 2003, right? And he's like, no, this is a lot earlier. He does admit he fell for neocon tricks in the WMD weapons of mass destruction argument, but he wouldn't fall for that again, right? He didn't, he had, like most of us, believed the news for many years. I did. And honestly, I saw a lot of bullshit from 2014, 2015, 2016, even earlier when I was involved with the Stephen Harper administration in Canada. I saw just how corrupted it was, but not even I could understand until Trump came around just how rotten the system was, right? So when I first saw that, when I first understood it, it revealed a whole, I had to redo everything I ever understood, right? I don't believe the news has ever been real. Mike Benz sort of confirmed it. My mind wouldn't even been able to understand the Mike Benz interview 5 years ago. Nah, 5 is too little. Before Trump, I wouldn't have been able to even understand the context of what Mike Benz was talking about, right? And now you can kind of get it. You can see the pieces fall into place, and it makes sense because of observations and what we've seen. So, you know, David Sachs getting pressured yesterday admitted, right? Years ago, he thought some of this stuff was legit and they're trying to use this to attack him. So he says the pressure on Speaker Johnson must be enormous. I compliment him for holding firm so far, but at the end of the day, I expect something will pass. Pockets don't line themselves. If Ukraine supporters wanted to persuade us that there's no money laundering going on, they would have agreed to an accountant. They rejected it twice. So they're not even allowed to account for the money that's going there. Now, of course, you get all these articles also saying, oh, the money's coming to America. It doesn't matter. We spend money on the war. We're getting rich, right? It's great. The weapons people are American. When you spend 60 billion, you're not giving it to individual Ukrainians. You're giving it to American companies, right? But they won't even hire an accountant for that. Now, again, go into the list of things that didn't work in order to get this money passed. They're going to keep trying, right? They're going to keep saying Navalny, space nukes, Brian Stelter. But these people just can't move the needle as much as they might have before. And with the media broken to the extent that it has, they're not sending us their best. These are not people who can move the needle. They can't persuade people. And the next thing that I think is going to happen here, right, which when David Sachs says they're going to get the money, I have an idea of where the money is going to come from. And it will actually be the end, I think, the end of the petrodollar and the U.S. using the U.S. dollar as a strategic weapon. And that will be when they take the Russian money, because I think that's where it's headed. They're going to take the Russian money that they seized and they're going to give it to Ukraine, right? Which we must hope for. We must hope for that. As awful as it is, you got to hope for it, because it will prove the corruption of the system. It will prove that the U.S. put their wrecking ball U.S. dollar financial sanction architecture above energy. And that is a fatal mistake. And the mistake is so fatal that it actually creates the wedge. It creates the lever through which Bitcoiners will pry and separate money from state. Energy, just like Doomberg said, is not some weird little output. Energy is the whole economy. And in the end, the energy companies having to politically side with people like Biden, with people that are corrupt, with people that aren't necessarily looking out for them, those energy companies have an opportunity to shuffle the deck in a way that will preserve their own wealth and position in the world, right? So if they take that money, they are basically signing the execution papers for the hegemonic US dollar, and it will be over after that, right? So now it's not all good news, right? The reason why it can end quickly is good, right? The reason why it can end quickly is because, and this comes from a look at the last time this sort of migration ever happened, and this comes from Balaji, right? So what he's talking about here is capital flight. He says, this is interesting. I knew that talent had fled socialism, communism, fascism, and fundamentalism for the US over the course of the 20th century. And of course, the US has the deepest capital markets and most reliable property rights in the world after World War II. But I actually hadn't looked deeply into the international capital flows in the early 20th century. And it appears there may have been some truth to the idea that capital fled the chaos of the old world for relative stability dating back to even World War I. Now, we have proof of this. If you read the F. Scott Fitzgerald Great Gatsby, right, in the opening chapter in Great Gatsby, the first party that Gatsby throws, they're looking at people, and everyone's eyeing people out, and the guy, the protagonist, the narrator of the story, sees these British people, and this is just after World War I, and all these British people have come to New York City literally like shitcoin salesmen, right? That's the way he presents it, that all these British people just want to get near the money, and they believe that all they have to do is fall into some conversation with a rube American and they'll get money. So these guys come in with this idea that they're so sophisticated, right? That everybody wants to talk to them. They're British, right? They're in New York, but they have no money anymore. So they're coming to beg American prohibitionists and bootleggers for cash, right? The dirty, unwashed Americans. And they have this sort of arrogance about them. So the way, I'm butchering F. Scott Fitzgerald's description of it. He did it all in like a sentence, and it's one of the better sentences in there. Like just this idea that the British young men were coming to be near money and believed all of them in their eyes. They were this close to it. I've seen the same look whenever I see the shitcoiners around selling at events and all that stuff. I'm like, that's the F. Scott Fitzgerald Great Gatsby thing, right? The history repeating itself. So Balaji, saying it happened before, you could see it in the F. Scott Fitzgerald book. This is the important thing. He says, you don't need to get a 51% majority to change the world completely. And in fact, there are already more crypto owners globally than US citizens. They've opted into new systems of property rights and contract law, much as US immigrants did. So what he's saying here is history is repeating itself from that outflow of capital from the late World War I to World War II period is happening again. But this time it's Americans leaving and it's other people leaving, but they're not leaving to another country. They're leaving to another dimension. They're leaving to Bitcoin. And here's the numbers. It's actually unbelievable. It turns out that 420 million people own crypto worldwide. Now, I would say, as someone who worked in media for a long time, what I can tell you is most people answer any question about crypto, you can interchange the word Bitcoin most of the time, right? Bitcoin remains by far the biggest, by far the most interesting. I don't think I have to explain that all to you guys. And the energy piece is what makes it more relevant. So anyway, Balaji here is saying that the energy companies themselves, right, are part of it, individuals plus energy companies, but the system is already there. There's already what amounts to a country. I've said it many, many times. We are basically building a country here. And what we've got already with the financial system and these little pockets of ranchers, I've said many times that Bitcoiners understand and probably prioritize and value the energy and economic input of ranchers way more than the fiat system, which is one of our secret advantages, right? That we want to see ranchers overtake Wall Street financial engineers as some of the largest earners in the next era. And we believe that. We want the best and brightest to go be ranchers to make the beautiful food for everyone, and not on Wall Street to do, derivative swaps, credit default insurance, that kind of stuff. So Balaji's saying here that people will simply move over to this new system, and already have. And what's already moved over is probably enough to get the whole machine going. Now, this comes in the context of something that Russell Okun has been talking about for a while, and something that I always want to, bring up, and I think it's important. So it goes like this. Russell Okun, if you guys don't know who Russell Okun was, he was the NFL player who got a bunch of NFLers into Bitcoin. Tom Brady, for example, got into Bitcoin because of him. I had dinner with him a couple years ago. Really nice guy. And here he's saying he was just in Africa and he was advocating for Lightning, and he faced a cold, hard realization that people mostly just wanted stable coins and USDT. And so he was like, well, I kept trying to sell Bitcoin. Lightning doesn't work. Can't get people signed up. Now that the transaction fees are so high, it's really a problem. I just have to admit the truth. They want US dollars, right? And that sort of continues to flush with my point of view. And Ansel Linder, who I do lots of content with, Ansel, I think one of the best market analysts out there, really one of my favorite, right on all the time. He's called, pretty much every price fluctuation correctly in the last 2 years that I've seen. He's been right on target with most of it. Here's what he says. This is a hard pill to swallow for many Bitcoiners who see Bitcoin as some great virtuous leveler. It is not. Income equality very well could increase with the Bitcoin standard. Mark Moss says it is a hard pill to swallow. It will help them also, but in the long way around. Ansel says, yes, all boats will rise, pulled up by the more able and free markets. However, I'm not very bullish on freer markets over the next several generations, especially in the global south. So I'd say his time frame here is a little too short, right? Or too long. I think this is all happening very quickly. And again, what I think is going to happen is the BlackRocks and the energy companies are starting to understand that their risk is in continuing with the political fights, continuing with the fiat system, that they need to de-risk from this. And so Bitcoin is not, I used to believe we could do it from every pleb holding. In the end, it's going to be from the rich oligarchic entities, which continue to become, more and more powerful. It's going to be their will that will help separate the money from state, because why should the energy companies who are competing in this way be left like that? Now, they did for a long time. The US used its war machine to project this system around the world. That's why you couldn't buy oil for anything but the US dollar. But that world is now long gone. Ever since the Ukraine war started, you can sell oil for almost anything now. And that's because of the sanctions. So as we continue to move forward, you're going to get more and more people that realize that the de-risking they have to do from the energy side. So not just plebs making this. Every pleb who figures this out early is still going to have an advantage. But as Balaji said, you don't need it to be 50% of the world. You don't need Anita, what's her name again? This lady that goes in Africa and says Bitcoin is for fairness, right? Anita Posh, right? She's always out there. Bitcoin is for fairness. Some people believe you have to go that route. Like every person has to get a little bit of Bitcoin and then revolution, right? That's not what Balaji's saying. That's not what Ansel's saying. And that's not what I'm saying, right? I'm saying that you just really need the energy companies to realize that their biggest risk is their own politicians. Once they understand it's the same thing, that plebs who should be worried about the government and government overreach, normal Americans who have seen that they have no reason to trust their government at all, they have no reason to trust the legal system, no reason to trust the media, no reason to trust any of it, the education system, all shit and crap. And eventually the energy companies are going to come to the same realization, right? So today you've got Anita, she's crying because Alejandro, the guy in El Salvador, died. Now, I don't know what's going on with El Salvador and Bukele and this guy that died. I knew about this guy a long time ago, right? Everybody knew about him. Everybody knew he went missing, right? And everyone was like, not great. But we're not dealing with a bunch of kindergarten kids who are virtuous and Bitcoin for fairness. Bitcoin is not fair, guys. I'm telling you, fairness is not a real thing at all. It's not a real thing. It's just fake. It's for stupid people to have a reference to talk about something. That's it. When someone is an NPC, someone has, trouble understanding the world when their opinion on things is that's not fair. That's what children think. That's for children. It's not a real idea. It's a child's now, a child is born to understand that, right? All children want to know is, why am I because my kid, what can I do? What do I have access to as I grow older? That's literally everything, right? When I look at my kids, the little one is trying to find out what special rules apply to them, what they can and can't do, how they get more access to stuff like the older kid. Literally the entire game that kids play all the time, their worldview is about fairness. Now that ends at a certain time, right? It's normal for kids to want to understand that because things aren't fair for kids, especially, right? Why can't I do this? Why can't I make my choice? Because you're learning and you don't really know how to make choices. And that's what parents are for, right? So now we're trying to say, Anita, whatever her name is, that Bitcoin is going to make people's brains like become fair. Like here's my stuff because you don't have any. That's not the world we're headed to, guys. I hate to tell you, it's not that world. Now, we can allocate capital better. That'll happen on a Bitcoin standard. People who have ideas are going to get money right away to realize their ideas because it's not going to be all confused, right? I don't think anyone's going to go without. I think we're going to have material want figured out, right? Because we can figure this stuff out. But it's not going to be because we had a democratic leader who inspired us and got everyone to use a Shiva wallet and there you go, right? It's not that. It's not where we're going. So she's, he paid, this is what she says. He paid the highest price one can pay for his activism against Bukele, right? And he died. So she's sitting there saying, oh, Bukele, like you can't just lock up people with face tattoos and Satanists. You can't do that. They have legal rights. We're out of that world, guys. I mean, for better or worse, we're out of that world. Like, there's nothing I can say. It's not fair. Fairness is not a guiding principle in anything that's happening in the next few years. Nothing to do with fairness, unfortunately. It's just power. And energy companies, if they had some argument for fairness and said, oh, it's not fair. We paid so much taxes. We should have the US military protecting us like it always was. We built all our assumptions on aircraft carrier invulnerability, right? Well, that world is gone. And what are the energy companies going to say? It's not fair. It's not fair. No. And how do I know they're gone? Well, it's very simple, right? It doesn't take a genius. Even the Washington Post got this right? This is a headline yesterday from the Washington Post talking about the El Segundo drone hackathon that I made the show yesterday about. Right? Here's what they say. This is an actual Washington Post headline, and I can't believe they got it right. This is it. How Silicon Valley learned to love America, drones, and glory. After a decade of building the future, tech's new guard is going back to America's past and spurring a funding bonanza. And that's what is happening. We've altered the cost of violence. Energy companies can't cry about aircraft carrier unsuitability for power projection these days. They're going to have to accept the world they're in. And the world they're in is got new unfairnesses about them. And one of them is super unfair that you can build a 500. So did you understand? The thing I even described yesterday is incredible. It requires no signal, no connection to the internet. It just has Google Maps as its brain. And you can literally give it a picture and it will find the thing and kill it. And it costs $500, right? So you can just go kill. It's a kill bot. It's a kill bot, right? No evidence, nothing that can be proven, I don't think. So you can create one of these and just send it out to kill. That's not fair. Of course it's not fair, but that's the world we're in. And, the idea, again, of energy companies having to continue to put their own needs second to government, to having to be absorb risk from having people like Biden in charge and Bidenism and Bidenomics and all that stuff. The benefit they get from having the military back them is going away. So what want or need or fear will the government satisfy for them going forward? Less and less. And if you think about the things that are happening in politics right now, they'll have clear reasons to leave this system currently. You even take the argument of threats to democracy, right? Well, could the energy companies be finger wagged and nagged? Like, it's not fair. We need, you're on the American team. We got to protect democracy. Look at what Nate Silver is even saying about that argument. And just think about executive American energy companies listening to this argument. Nate Silver says, you don't demonstrate your seriousness that Trump is an existential threat to democracy. So what he's saying is here, if you believe Trump is an existential threat to democracy, this is Nate Silver is becoming the best, by the way, now that he doesn't work for the fake news anymore. And I've always been a fan of Nate Silver, honestly. A pollster, good data guy, right? You don't demonstrate your seriousness that Trump is an existential threat to democracy by going through the motions to renominate an 81-year-old, right? So if you're so interested in democracy, right, and Trump is such a threat, and you believe that, then why are you going with an 81-year-old with a 38% approval rating and 75% of Americans think he's too old? And now your point is to not give anyone a choice. Right? Just go with that, right? What do you think that, what signal does that send? Confidence, right? And Scott Adams says the same thing here. More Democrats, such as Bill Maher, are saying Biden is not the best candidate for 2024. I agree. For example, RFK Jr. is a far stronger choice. That's why Biden is trying to kill him. Right. So Nikki Haley got security detail now. She's got her Secret Service, right? RFK still doesn't have it. So you got to understand that there's energy companies who've got to sit there and say, okay, Joe Biden, who's got so the bust behind him, you hear him talking, that when you hear him do the Oval Office interviews, he's got an MLK bust. He's got another bust, which I always thought was JFK. It's not, it's RFK. So RFK even said, I think, look, Joe Biden has always been great to me. He's always loved my family. He's always looked out for me since I was a kid, always interested in what was going on. Now, you got to remember, Biden is a Catholic as well, right? And Kennedy was the only other Catholic. So you got to think that the Catholic kids from the boomer era, well, he's a silent generation, but the Catholic kids from that era have reverence for JFK. So what RFK says is that he doesn't know who's running the country, because Joe Biden would never personally deny his personal Secret Service detail. Like that, the idea to RFK seems insane. What RFK thinks is happening is because he's so geriatric and because his brain is so mushy and he doesn't know where he is and what's going on and what day it is, that other people are making the call on no RFK Secret Service. RFK is basically saying Biden is so out of it that he's doing that he's not even capable of ordering Secret Service to help RFK. People are even saying that Biden can't even make HR decisions. Like Biden couldn't even hire someone in his own office. I believe that. Do you think Biden has the authority to hire someone in his office for like a relatively important role? Of course not, right? You think Biden can just go in one day, I want to hire this guy. This guy's my new whatever. No, he can't even hire people, right? So if people are going to take on this risk, if people are going to continue to go in this direction, there's going to be costs to pay. And you can see it. Now, this is a sad story. It's sad, right? But this is what's coming for energy companies unless they make these choices. And it's not energy. It's the last industry the US government destroyed, which is media, right? In order to preserve this fake US dollar thing. Which industry did they destroy in order to destroy Trump and try to protect their position? It was the media. They destroyed it. Right? It's no one, like I've been saying this whole morning, the persuasion power is zero. There's nothing left. It's just Brian Stelter and the losers coming at you, nagging you, right? Only the low information people can fall for this. Only the people who don't know what's going on or who have massive Trump derangement syndrome couldn't accept any of this. But this is the sad story, right? This is the sad story, and it's from NBC News. Well, everyone's talking about it. It's the YouTube CEO, Susan, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Unfortunately for her, it turned out that her 19-year-old son died of fentanyl over the weekend, right? Very, very sad. Now, it turns out that both Susan and the grandmother, who was posting about all of this on stuff on Facebook, were massive, massive anti-Trumpers. And when Susan was asked by the US government to censor 2020 election talk, when she was asked to censor what happened with Hunter Biden laptop. When she was asked to censor border security issues, she did. Now, what situation did she cause by doing all this stuff? Well, she caused fentanyl. She created a circumstance where America has allowed fentanyl to come into the border at numbers that we can't even imagine, right? We don't even really know. It's millions and millions of people and more fentanyl than we've ever had. And people are dying all the time. The death rate is higher than the Vietnam War, and it's young people again and again and again. And this poor guy, and again, this is not, I don't think he was a drug addict. I think it's one shot and you could be gone. Apparently it's in the cannabis, the weed now, right? It's everywhere. It's war. And she participated in a way that exposed her own family, and they're dead. So she's got to live with that now. Not going to be easy. I don't think she'll ever have another day where that goes away, that pain. But who's next? What company? This is YouTube, right? What company will be next? Will the energy companies allow this kind of result to take place, which will be more clear and present than a media company? She can be almost excused because she might have a broken brain. She might not have seen the math. Unfortunately, she has the rest of her life to figure it out. And I think she's going to. I think she's going to find out that censorship had a cost. That aligning yourself with this dying animal has a cost. And not a lot of people have added it up yet. She's unfortunately got to be one of the first, and the cost to her is everything. And so will energy companies do the same? Or will energy companies say, all of our staff here want to make money. All of the people working for this energy company want to be rich, and none of them want their kids to die, right? So energy companies are on they have a choice to make. Some might make a poor choice. They might choose poorly. Many will choose wisely. And the ones who choose wisely are going to do what I think Bitcoiners predict they'll do, which is they're going to start doing what Tesla does. They're going to start keeping Bitcoin on their balance sheets. They're going to start to de-risk from the US dollar, and they're going to start using Bitcoin to help finance and stabilize their grids. Bitcoin's future is with the energy industry. I think we all know that. And it's not a NIDA's thing with like, oh, what happened with fucking security guards. Unfortunately, people are going to continue to die. We're not in a world of oh, this person is great. They did so much for Bitcoin. They get to live. It's not that, right? I don't know what Bukele did. I've never said that everything Bukele does is great. Bukele is running a war, and in war, things happen. And I don't know what happened. I can't even say he's innocent. He probably isn't, right? But it doesn't change that he's not going anywhere, that the volcano bond exists, and that the energy concept around it is going to be exported, and that more countries that see what Bukele did are going to take the same action. You've got it already here, right? We've got Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger all deciding that they're getting rid of the franc just the other day. Are they going to go to the US dollar? Or are they going to go to Bitcoin? I think we know the answer, right? So what's going on over there is going to continue. What's going on in El Salvador, what's going on, we're going to see it confirmed shortly in Argentina, is not going to stop. And the energy companies are not going to sit around and listen to fucking Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and Bidenomics and Bidenism. Do you think they give a shit about Jake Sullivan? You think they give a shit about any of these people, right? Now that their whole scheme, now I understand why they got involved in Ukraine in the first. Let's go steal the Russian market. Sure. We can use the American military to steal the Russian energy market. Boom, let's go. And then you find out, right, as Mike Tyson has said many times, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's what happened to America. We had a plan, and the energy company said, yeah, bomb Nord Stream. Remember, it doesn't matter who actually bombed Nord Stream. American energy companies said, yeah, we can handle this, right? We can make sure Europe has energy. And they did. They made sure Europe had energy. But at what cost? Now the energy companies, they're not going to be persuaded by soldiers in a trench looking on their phones to see if Congress has passed a budget to spend. They don't care. They don't care, right? Sorry, guys in the trench. Good luck. So energy companies have a choice to make, and soon. Now, I think they're going to go the way of Texas. I think Quebec, take Quebec, for example. Quebec, right? I saw the news was saying yesterday, Swanton border crossing, Vermont. That's like 5 miles away from my house, right? Everyone buying guns, migrants coming through. I've seen a few. I live right on the border. I've seen it, right? I've seen the people come through. I've seen the trouble. It's really there. Where I am exactly is because I'm in a huge pasture, they would never come by my field, right? It's 2 stations, one next to the other, and in the middle, 2 border crossings, and in the middle is a huge pasture, and that's where I am. So I can see hundreds of miles in every direction on fields and meadows. So it's not a great place to come across, because there's even, like the neighbor on this side has a sniper tower to kill stuff. Usually animals. It's a deer perch, right? But who knows what they're doing these days for fun. So Canada, right? Immigration controlled by the federal government. Do you think energy-rich Quebec is so happy? First of all, they hated it when they allowed, that was Canada, that allowed border crossings, illegal border crossings from the United States into Canada during the Trump years, like the fake refugees from Trumpism to America, right? To Canada. Quebecers hated that. I mean, hated it because it's sovereignty, and they didn't do the Texas thing of control the border. They kind of let it go. But Quebec blames Canada for whatever trouble comes their way as far as immigration goes. And now that there's border crossings coming, Quebec is going to have to start realizing that they're going to pay an economic cost at their border because of Canada again. Quebec is going to want to start exercising its sovereignty of government, of territory. Quebec separation only needs a weakening of the Canadian dollar, and Quebec will understand what it can do with its energy and Bitcoin, and that it has all the ingredients with Bitcoin and energy to make a country. And when it does realize that, which is literally any day now, Quebec separation is on the rise in Quebec because of all these political issues. Now, I know I've said many times before, people say, oh, Quebec was the worst during COVID. They're fascist. Hold on a second. Quebec is one of the most amazing places when it comes to this stuff. Don't get confused. They were the worst during COVID. But Quebec can turn on a dime more than any place I've ever seen in the world. Quebec is the only place in Canada that the political parties are recreated every generation, right? I talked weeks ago to the Quebecers who remember when I talked about Maurice Duplessis, who was the leader in the 1950s and back into the 30s. Duplessis used to have, totally interested in electricity, helped build a lot of the infrastructure that went into Quebec and Hydro-Quebec to make it the largest public utility in the world, right? Hydro-Quebec, the largest public utility on Earth. So the Duplessis thing, what happened is why he became such a big, not joke, but why he was so criticized in Quebec in history is because, as is always the case, Quebec political parties spring up, enjoy a bunch of success, and then die. So Duplessis never had anyone around defending him after he was gone. His party was just a dog that everyone could kick. So no one was there to defend him because the party was dissolved. It was called the National Union, the Union Nationale. So that went away. Quebec has a long history of just totally upending things and starting fresh. The political parties in Quebec have nothing to do with the rest of the country. They have their own parties. They've created parties, destroyed parties, started fresh many, many times, and can do it again. They can change their mind on a dime about this stuff because they move as a people much more than the rest of immigrant Canada or immigrant United States, right? Quebecers really are a people, a peuple, as they say, right? Just like Japanese or Chinese so there's a lot of, and I even had a thought when I was listening to everything of Mike Benz. I wasn't sure of this before, but now I am. Now I'm sure of this, that Canada, right? Canada was used as one of these buffer zones. Mike Benz talked about ideological buffer zones where persuasion and propaganda are used so that things don't come to America. This was the approach before they turned on Americans during the Trump era and trained their guns inwards. But the whole idea of them doing it outwards in Germany and these other places, I'm now more or less convinced Canada has been an experiment or a buffer zone for America to test ideas and to sow certain amount of division, because there's a benefit there for America if Canada has a little bit of trouble. So I do think that the CIA has done a lot of persuasion inside of Canada over the years. And, I don't have proof necessarily, but it's kind of made sense based on everything I heard from Mike Benz. I don't think it was a priority file or anything like that. Like, I don't think they were so hell bent on it or anything like that. But I do think that it was part of what can explain what was going on over there. So what was I saying about Quebec? Why was I even mentioning that? Energy. Anyway, Quebec will be fine. They're gonna be one of the first to realize this, right? Burkina Faso, yeah. You don't like to it's sad what happened to the YouTube CEO, but what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Hold on, where am I? Tommy says, Bitcoin makes the world fair because now there is a number that can no longer change. Literally, that's it. Yeah, but that's the only thing. It doesn't like make humans more fair. It allocates capital better. I think all ships rise because of it. And it makes financial calculations easier. So by fair, it makes things easier. I don't know if that's necessarily, I mean, it's a type of fairness. Yeah. Most people. Yeah. Look, all I mean is it's not persuasive. If you say something isn't fair, that's a child's argument. It doesn't make, no one's like, oh, you're right. It's not fair. I got to completely change what I think. It's not how the way the world works, unfortunately. Having a set of monetary rules. Yeah, me too. Yeah, no, I do. But there's people who take that to the extreme. It's the same people who will say, that's a bad idea because it's not fair or whatever. Anyone who thinks fairness is a metric through which you should talk about something is missing the mark, is what I'm saying, right? Yeah, neutral is fair. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Also talks about does he really? I didn't know that. Sluggo says, in the wonderful Sailor series on What is Money, Sailor talks about the unfairness of reality. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's it's just the way it is. I mean, show me fairness, right? Yeah. When I was a kid in the exactly. When I was a kid in the 60s, all the Catholic families had a portrait of Jesus and one of JFK side by side. Yeah, exactly. And Daniel, being a Vermonter, is also a Quebecer. That's what makes Vermont different than the rest of New England. The source people of Vermont are not English, even though it's New England. The source people, like Daniel Renault, are Quebecers. So there's more Catholics by a long shot in Vermont than there are in the rest of New England, even though New England has a lot because of the Irish, right? The Irish came and did a lot of Catholicing, but it's a unique part of Vermont where it's, I don't know about majority Catholic, but very Catholic compared to anything. Le Parti BTC. Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, what was I'm trying to remember what I was trying to explain about Quebec and what happened in those years, but I completely forgot what I was talking, like what I was trying to drive towards. After an hour, I start losing my dark and light acid, like with each thing, including they're dark. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. No. Now it's up to us Bitcoiners, I think, to make it's up to us Bitcoiners to make sure that the dark parts of Bitcoin aren't so bad that they destroy what we're trying to build, right? And I think we're going to be able to take care of it. I think we're going to be able to take care of it. All we really need is less brainwashing and less psychological operations. So I think that'll do. Matt says, don't experts agree space drops might be the best way to protect our democracy? Yeah, I think so. I think so. Geez, I thought what I was going to say about Quebec was really clever. Now I can't remember. Anyway, Quebec can pivot on a dime, change what it does, change its worldview very quickly. North New Hampshire also, Richard says. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I bet. I go to North New Hampshire sometimes, but it's pretty rural for me. I'm normally going through the White Mountains and Conway to get to Maine. You know, that's how I roll. All right, team. That's all I got for today. Thanks for coming. Thanks for patiently waiting while I got some coffee. You know, the water was good though. The water was good. We like the water. All right, team. Thanks for your patience as well with getting used to this new system. Looks like we got a huge audience. Let me see, just out of curiosity, what's going on over on the BM Magazine Rumble. Just so we know before I sign off. Oh yeah, great. Great. We're when one side equals one, coin will be a stable coin. All things in balance. Maurice Duplessis, yes, Gene, yes. That's not how you would spell Duplessis, but that's the name. Yeah, that's the name. Fairness is a human nature factor. Where, yeah, equity is an economic factor. Yeah, that's what Veterans Cannabis says. All right, team. Thanks for coming. I'll see you all tomorrow. I got family coming today. We're all excited. We're all excited. We work for money they're creating for free. Yes. Yes, Hammer Saw. That's. But again, are you motivated by the fairness or the fear of what that can do to you and the power you're giving them, right? So to me, it's not the fairness that motivates me, right? There's people who will always be richer than me. It's not about giving everyone the same amount of money, right? Yeah, cut through the monetary fog. Yes. Again, that's not fairness. That's just a good outcome, right? Cutting through the fog and revealing the truth of a complex enslavement, exactly what you said, Hammer Saw, is a much that's a much more powerful motivating factor than just it's not fair, right? That's a crime. That's not about fairness. That's evil. Evil is not the same. All right. Peace, everyone. Peace.